Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We are going to get started and get right into it. My name is Chris Garaffa. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Covert Action Bulletin podcast, the official radio show and podcast of Covert Action Magazine. You can hear us on WBAI in New York City, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Or 9 a.m., I'm sorry. And you can get us in your favorite podcast player whenever you want every week. We're really excited for tonight's webinar, and we really appreciate you all joining us. You know, we're well over 100 days into the latest Israeli siege on Gaza, with millions of people across the world having sprung into action to be in solidarity with the Palestinian people. At least 70 cities, from Atlanta to Seattle and Chicago to Bridgeport, Connecticut, have passed ceasefire resolutions, and international days of action have brought countless demonstrations, shutdowns, and more, threatening business as usual. And people are questioning why it is that the US relies so heavily on Israel to do its bidding in the Middle East, to the point of funding genocide to the tune of $4 billion a year, with many more billions extra available basically on request. We have to stop funding this war machine. Tonight, we do have a really exciting lineup of speakers. We're having a little technical trouble with some of our guests, but we do have a really fantastic program to go through tonight. So before we get into it, and we're going to be exposing, the dynamics behind Israel's aggression and the role of the United States. But before we get into it, I want to ask everyone, if you appreciate Covert Action Magazine and the content that we bring you, please take a moment to go to our website and make a donation. We are completely reliant on the funding from our readers and our supporters to keep this work going. And we'll drop a link in the chat too, but it's covertactionmagazine.com/donate. So I want to get right into this. I want to introduce our guest, Matthew Ho. He's a former U.S. Marine Corps captain, an Iraq veteran, an Afghanistan State Department officer, and a senior fellow at the Center for International Policy. And he's going to talk about the terrible human cost to the war and the threat that the conflict holds for unleashing a world war using Israel as a proxy. So please join me in welcoming Matthew. Pin you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Hear me okay?
You're great.
Okay, great, terrific. I was just doing some last second math there for something I want to talk about earlier. So I appreciate you having me here tonight. Thank you for everyone for tuning in and watching this. And of course, thank you for your ongoing concern for and solidarity with the Palestinian people, as well as your ongoing efforts to oppose the American empire. I was asked to speak about the costs of this genocide that is occurring, as well as to tie it in a bit to American complicity with it. And then also there's a third thing, if we have time, I'll get into that as well, how this transforms into a larger war. And certainly we are seeing that at play as we see, this war not only confined to Gaza, but certainly to the people of the West Bank, to Lebanon, to Syria, to Iraq, to Yemen. So this idea that this is a wider war or could be a wider war is something that's already occurring, and it already exists. And we'll speak about that a bit and hopefully get to some questions, and hopefully my colleagues on the panel are able to join us. But, with regards to the genocide, if people want to have the best summation of why this is a genocide, there is no better argument than that which South Africa put forward in the International Court of Justice. It's about 85 pages long. If you have people in your life who do not agree with that term, genocide, provide them with that document, provide them with South Africa's argument that this is genocide. It is at 85 pages, not succinct, but it is compelling, and it is authoritative. And I know many people whose minds have been changed about the usage of the term genocide by that argument made by South Africa. But as we are here tonight, according to the health ministry in Gaza, 4.5% of the Gazan population has been killed, wounded, or are missing since October 7th. 4.5% of the population. I mean, that is just simply astounding. The equivalent numbers for the Americans, if you were to do that here, you're talking about tens and tens of millions of people killed, wounded, or made missing by a foreign power. The costs are it's dramatic, particularly when you're able to make points of comparison. But just as of today, again from the Gaza Health Ministry, and we know these numbers are conservative, but as of today, the Gaza Health Ministry reports 27,478 people have been killed. More than 66,835 are missing. I'm sorry, 66,835 are wounded. More than 8,000 are missing. Among those numbers, you have 11,500 children that are killed. To make a comparison, the United Nations reports that Russia, in its 2-year long war in Ukraine, has killed less than 600 children. So we've seen the Israelis in less than 4 months kill 11,500 children, at least 11,500 children, while the Russians have killed less than 600 in 2 years. The numbers are conservative. We know this because you can look at the history of warfare, understanding that oftentimes our understanding of casualty counts only comes at a later time. You can look at the videos from Gaza. You can look at the destruction that is occurring. You could look at the tonnage of bombs released. More than the Hiroshima bomb has been released in terms of explosive weight against the people of Gaza. And you could just conclude that there has to be more dead, that there have to be more wounded. And of course, those more than 8,000 that are missing, again, looking at the videos of the destroyed building, knowing that the Palestinians have no ability to rescue these people other than by using their hands, we know that only a handful of those who are officially missing will be found alive, will be rescued. We also know that the Israelis are deliberately targeting medical infrastructure as well as the communications infrastructure. There's many reasons for that, but one of the reasons is to ensure that reporting does not occur. We know that these numbers are correct and accurate. We know this because Israeli media has reported that these are the numbers that the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli intelligence agencies use. They use the Gaza Health Ministry numbers. We know from back in October, because Yahoo News in the United States told us that the State Department uses these numbers. We know that the United Nations and human rights organizations use these numbers. You could suppose that NATO, armed forces, intelligence service, governments utilize these numbers as well. So we know that these numbers are accurate, and by any means, they are an undercount. And so one of the purposes in that direct assault on the medical and communications infrastructure of Gaza is to prevent this type of information from being assembled and being reported. It's also one of the reasons why Israel's scared to death that Western journalists are going to get into Gaza and be able to report. I mean, the Palestinians who have been reporting they are heroes for their heroism in their journalism is unparalleled. But unfortunately, we live in a culture that discounts them. And the Israelis know this. And so they know that Western audiences will receive information from a Western journalist differently than they will from a Palestinian journalist. I mean, that's gross, and it's awful, but that's the reality of it. So this is why the Israelis work so hard to either prevent the information being collected and disseminated, and if it is, to belittle it and try and try and claim it is not valid. Just as one last number on the physical costs here, just in the last 24 hours, you've had 113 Palestinians killed and 205 injured, and those numbers are daily like that. The deaths running into the hundreds, the wounded running into the high hundreds, into the thousands. And this has been going on for 122 days now. We see the displacement. 85% of Palestinians are displaced. So out of a population of 2.2 million, you're looking at roughly about 2 million people being displaced. At this point, a majority of them are located in the southernmost city of Rafah. Estimates are 1.6 million people may be in Rafah right now. And if you've been following this, you know Rafah is the next target of attack for the Palestinians. These people have nowhere to go. So the idea that somehow we will not see an increase in the casualties is just makes, you know, it has to occur. If the Israelis push into Rafah, these casualty numbers will only climb. And of course, we are now seeing reports and have been for months now of the indirect effects of war, if you can call them that, but the effects of disease, illness, the weather, starvation. You know, there are reports of people freezing to death. Chris and I were just talking about that before we started this program. If you tune into Democracy Now! From this morning, you will see an interview with a Palestinian American gentleman whose family he recounts all the family he has killed in Gaza, and one of them was a 20-year-old who has frozen to death. You know, people think it's not possible in the Middle East to freeze to death. Well, you know, it doesn't really have to get that cold. You're talking about maybe into the 40s, particularly when you have wet weather, for hypothermia to be induced, right? So, I mean, the casualties are only going to climb. These numbers that we have are conservative. This idea that somehow it's going to stop at only 4.5% of the population being killed, wounded, or made missing. I'm really afraid at what we are going to see in terms of a month's 2 months, 6 months from now, what the casualty numbers will reflect, particularly as disease and starvation and exposure take hold. You know, the idea of genocide, though, isn't just about killing the people, right? Certainly, ethnic cleansing can be a component to genocide, so driving them off their land. But, you know, one of the things is to make the land uninhabitable. And you've seen that with the Israeli campaign, again, a deliberate campaign. So as of today, according to Al Jazeera, you've seen 360,000 residential units destroyed in Gaza. So 360,000 homes have been destroyed in Gaza. Prior to this genocide beginning, there were only 439,000 homes in Gaza. So if you're looking at these numbers, you do the math, and 82% of homes, of residential units in Gaza have been destroyed in the last 4 months. I mean, that's just, it's unfathomable, those numbers. I mean, but that is part of the plan. That is a deliberate process to make the land, to make the environment uninhabitable. And you start by displacing people and making it so that they cannot go back home, even they want to, because you have destroyed their homes. And certainly, I think people have probably seen the reporting on this, whether it's the Israeli army blowing up buildings, you know, for a variety of excuse with a variety of excuses and rationales, which our State Department, of course, either backs them on or pretends they don't have the knowledge to make a judgment on. Or we have seen even things where individual soldiers, individual units of the Israeli army burning homes down. Haaretz had a story on this last week, how the burning of Gazan homes has become routine. It is part of the policy. So whether they destroy them by bombing them, whether they destroy them by shelling them, whether they plant explosives and blow them up, or whether they burn them to the ground, they are making the land immediately uninhabitable by destroying these people's homes. You see it in terms of destroying the infrastructure. So we have seen more than half of Gazan schools destroyed. You know, you're talking about there's an ancillary aspect of this because many of those schools are also utilized as shelters for the people. You know, just to get on a tangent, that, you know, at the beginning of this 4 months ago, people will recall that how come there's no bomb shelters? Well, there are bomb shelters. There are places that are recognized by international law as safe zones for civilians. They are clearly marked. They are clearly identified ahead of time to the Israelis. Many of them are schools, and they are attacked relentlessly and deliberately. And so this idea about what about the bomb shelters? Well, we can see what's happening to the bomb shelters. They're blowing them up. They would have done the same if they put them underground. It doesn't really matter because this is part of the Israeli plan is to make the land uninhabitable. And one of the things you do is by taking away a people's ability to function, to live, to thrive. And to do that, you destroy their education system. So as we said, we've seen more than half of the schools in Gaza destroyed. We have seen all of the universities in Gaza destroyed. All, off the top of my head, I can't remember, 12 or 14, I can't remember which number it is. All of the universities in Gaza have been destroyed. Again, very deliberate. It's planned. It's part of making, as genocide, part of making the land, the environment, the area uninhabitable. We've seen 221 places of worship have been destroyed, and reports are that there is not one church or mosque left standing in North Gaza. So you take away people's who they are. And this gets into another aspect of genocide of that I'll get to in a moment. But this phase, you're making it uninhabitable. There's nothing there. You're taking away their infrastructure, you're taking away their sense of place, their sense of belonging. And you do that by destroying their community. Of course, another aspect of this is by destroying their medical infrastructure. And we know that out of 35 hospitals that were fully functioning on October 7th, only 13 are partially functioning. And I think you probably are stretching that term partially to include a lot of hospitals that anywhere else in the world would be considered inoperable. That would not be functioning at all. I mean, certainly you've seen the number of healthcare professionals who have been killed, whether they be doctors, nurses, staff, ambulance drivers. The number of ambulances that have been destroyed have been in the hundreds. They have been deliberately targeted, just as the healthcare facilities have been deliberately targeted. You destroy the water, you destroy the land. And so you see this by attacking the infrastructure, say the water infrastructure. You see the Israelis, they will bring their vehicles in, and they do this in the West Bank as well. They will dig up the streets, makes the roads, of course, impassable, unusable. But what it also does is you're tearing apart the water infrastructure, whether it be the freshwater lines or the sewage lines. So if you cannot get water, as well as you're exposed to open sewage, the land is uninhabitable. What they have gone even a step further is by attacking the tunnel systems, the Hamas tunnel systems in Gaza. They have pumped seawater into these tunnels. It is an attempt to either drown or flush out Hamas fighters. It doesn't seem to be working at all, but it also has a secondary effect, and maybe that's the primary effect of ruining the land. So whether it's agricultural land, which is also being destroyed by the Israelis driving their vehicles through it and using chemical means to destroy the land, but also too, they are flooding these tunnels with the seawater, which as it drains out of the tunnels, because the tunnels are porous, it destroys the land. That salt water makes the land unable to be used for agriculture, but also too, it destroys the water table. So whether that water is going to be used to drink or whether it's going to be used to irrigate the land, it's unusable because it's now contaminated with salt water. So again, another way you make the land uninhabitable. Excuse me, the assaults on the land and the assaults on the infrastructure and the assaults on the people are meant, of course, to drive the people away, to kill them as well as to cleanse the land of them. But there's also another phase of this too, in terms of how the genocide works, wherein you attack the idea of the people. You make it so that these people do not exist, not just literally, but figuratively. and you take away their history, you take away their sense of place, their sense of being. And you've seen the Israelis, just as they have deliberately killed civilians, just as they deliberately killed children, they just as they have destroyed the land, the water, the infrastructure, they have destroyed the idea of being Palestinian, or they're attempting to destroy the idea of being Palestinian. As many as you know, Palestinians have they are steadfast. Samud is what they call it, and this is what you will hear Palestinians say very often. They're, and that they'll cite their steadfastness. But the idea, though, behind this other aspect of genocide is to destroy the identity of the people. And you do that. You see them killing poets. You see the Israelis killing poets. You see the Israelis killing artists. You see the Israelis killing singers. You see the Israelis who are killing people. They are targeting directly those who give identity, who give a sense of self to the Palestinians, who tell the Palestinians who they are, what they are about, where they came from, and where they can go. And of course, killing the children is a huge part of destroying where you can go as a people, because you are literally killing the future. You see the Israelis destroying statues and monuments. You see them destroying the museums and sacking the museums, taking away the Palestinians' antiquities, looting basically. But there's a more insidious, nefarious aspect of that looting, because it's not just meant for enrichment. It's meant to destroy the people, their identity, their history, who they are, where they came from. And of course, you see this most especially in the cemeteries. You've seen the reporting on the widespread destruction of cemeteries, not just desecration, but destruction of cemeteries, so that you are literally uprooting the people from their land. You are making it so that the Palestinians cannot point to a piece of ground and say, that is us, that is us, that is our people who are in that land. So this is such a the manner of this is done in such a deliberate, planned execution as to make it as if you were writing a story or scripting a movie, because it is so perfect, it is so deliberate, it is so well planned and choreographed, and there is an idea, there is a method. This is madness in its evil. It's madness in its inhumanity, but it's certainly not mad in its execution at all. And there's one aspect about this, and then I'll move on to another aspect, is the psychological aspect. And this, of course, plays into all three, right? Kill the people, make their land uninhabitable, destroy the idea of those people. And this is the psychological wounding that's occurring to the Palestinian people. The scale of the attacks, the fact that the entire population has been subjected, that there is no safe zone, that there is no escape, the mental health wounds, the consequences of this, not just for this generation, but for future generations, are immense. And we probably don't have a good idea of it, because we may not have seen anything like this in living history, of a people trapped, a people besieged and murdered on television, on our screens, on our phones, in front of us. What does that do psychologically to a people? I mean, certainly we understand the effects of warfare with post-traumatic stress disorder. You are going to see an incredible amount of traumatic brain injuries because of the concussive effects of all the bombs and missiles and shells being detonated, particularly in a built-up area. So those blast waves have nowhere to go. So you're going to have that type of effect in terms of the brain injuries on these people. You are going to have issues, of course, with depression and other associated mental health wounds. And it will carry on, and it will be a part of these people. And so we all understand at this point, there's no question about it. This is what the research and the literature tells us, that trauma is intergenerational. Trauma is passed down. So we have children who have not yet been born in Palestine, children who will not be born for generations, who will still bear the trauma of this genocide in the future. So the how all encompassing this is, how this genocide is just that. It is total. It is meant to destroy all aspects of the people, destroy their past, destroys their presence, destroys their future, destroys their lives, destroys their environment, destroys their livelihoods, destroys their infrastructure, destroys who they were, their history, destroys their arts and their communities. I mean, so what we are looking at here is evil, and it's an evil that's only matched by the complicity of the American government. And, the American government is complicit in 5 ways, through military assistance, intelligence assistance, political assistance, diplomatic assistance, and media assistance. Um, Chris, I just want to make sure that the other guests haven't come on.
No, you're doing fantastic. So let's just keep going. I think, I've certainly got questions for you, but I think you're getting into a lot of really important stuff right now. So
Okay.
let's just keep
Okay.
going with that. I want to hear more about these
That's what,
5 points for sure.
sure. That's one of the horrible things about what I just spoke about. Uh, I was expecting 2 other panelists, so I cut that back quite a bit. Right. And so now here I am by myself, and I didn't even touch on maybe 10%, 20%, 30% of what's actually occurring there. I'm sure there are people who are watching, right, who can say, hey, Matt, you didn't talk about this aspect of the genocide. You left out this, because it's the idea of it is to destroy every last piece of the Palestinians. It is eradication. It is extermination. And, but to get these five points of how the Americans are complicit in all this, in the military, intelligence, political, diplomatic, and media. And the military is quite clear, whether it's the actual soldiers who are there, at least 1,000, the reports are, led by a 3-star American general, the American general, Marine Corps general, who was very involved in the United States war against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. So he was very involved, of course, with the destruction of all those cities in eastern Syria, western Iraq, and northern Iraq. He has a team of about 1,000 people in Israel assisting the Israelis, providing advice and technical assistance. The really important thing about this, for people to understand, is what it means. If you have a 3-star general who is on the ground there, he can pick up the phone and call back to the Pentagon and say, I need this, and he will get it. And that's a lot quicker process than the Israelis having to make a formal request to the U.S. Embassy that we would like Reaper drone surveillance in this part of Gaza now, right? So it streamlines the process, and that's why those troops are there. Make sure things occur very quickly for the Israelis when they want them. You also have the equipment there. You have the drones that are there. The drones are not dropping bombs or firing missiles, but they have all their surveillance capabilities. This ties into the intelligence aspects of support for the Israeli genocide. In addition to all the drone support, you have the various aspects of American intelligence, signals support, or signals intelligence, satellite intelligence. Certainly, Gaza and is a priority for the American intelligence services now, and so a lot of resources that were pointed at another nation or another group are now being pointed at Gaza, and you could presume as well at the West Bank, most likely at Lebanon too, in terms of targeting Hezbollah, providing the information to Israel. One aspect of the military support, of course, is all the bombs being supplied, all the munitions being supplied, and it is massive. It is massive. The Israeli media last week reported that through January, 25,000 tons of munitions have been provided by the U.S. to Israel since October 7th. So it gives you, I mean, that is just a massive, massive amount. 25,000 tons is equivalent to 25 kilotons. For a point of comparison, the Hiroshima bomb was 15 kilotons. So the United States in the last 4 months have provided bombs with more than 1.5 times the explosive firepower of the Hiroshima bomb to the Israeli Defense Forces. We know that there are 2 or 3 American cargo planes landing every day in Israel, and we know that every third day, a cargo ship, an American cargo ship, shows up in an Israeli port and unloads these munitions. So the amount of supply is just massive. There is no way the Israelis could be conducting this genocide without the American assistance, most especially the amount of bombs being dropped, the amount of shells being fired, the amount of violence just being, put upon the Gazan people. That all comes from American supplied munitions, fired by American supplied weapons, or dropped from American supplied warplanes. You see with the political support, of course, most exemplified by the support in the United States Congress for Israel. Of course, this past weekend, we saw that Speaker Johnson is going to be putting forward a $17 billion funding bill for Israel. I don't see why that's not passed. The only reason it won't be passed is because there are political issues with the Senate regarding the border bill. But if that was not at play, I don't think anyone has any doubts that, with the exception of a few in the American Congress, that $17 billion will be approved in a quick and orderly manner. But that's the type of political support Israel has, and that support, of course, extends down to the state and local level. See here in North Carolina, where it was even last month, our state treasurer, Dale Folwell, who's running for governor, he's a Republican, made a big deal about enforcing North Carolina's prohibition of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. Specifically, he made a big deal about how Ben and Jerry's will not be a vendor or or under contract at all with the North Carolina state government because of Ben and Jerry's stance on not selling their ice cream in illegal Israeli settlements. But I mean, so you see it at that level, but you even see it at levels where, say, here in North Carolina, where we've had an amazing turnout to get the Raleigh City Council to call for a ceasefire. And we have heard from council members that the fear of Israeli lobby money interfering in their local elections is very real. So even at the local level, you see the politics in all this. And of course, that political cover enables Israel to do what it's doing. You have the diplomatic complicity, very easy to see, of course, whether it be in UN Security Council resolutions calling for ceasefire. This goes back decades. You can even see in the non-binding UN General Assembly the non-binding UN General Assembly resolutions, where the most recent one saying that Palestinians have a right to self-governance. All but 4 nations in the world voted for that. 2 of those were small Pacific Island nations that are beholden to the United States. And then the other 2, of course, were Israel and the United States. So you see that type of diplomatic cover, and that diplomatic cover is quite dangerous because what it turns into is the ability for the United States to stop funding for UNRWA. The ability of the United States to stop binding ceasefire resolutions, the ability of the United States to put in doubt the International Court of Justice. Does anyone have any doubts themselves that if the ICJ finds, and however long it takes, 6 months, a year, a couple of years, that Israel has committed genocide and orders Israel to do certain things in relation to that finding, that the United States will pull funding from the International Court of Justice, or that the United States will not sanction its members? People recall going back a couple of years when the International Criminal Court wanted to investigate U.S. war crimes in Afghanistan. The United States threatened to sanction the court and its members. In the same thing, too, the United States has made such declarations before to defend Israel, whether, with the International Criminal Court. So this diplomatic cover is very, very important because whether it's instances of international law, whether it's the ability of the United Nations to function, whether for its resolutions to be followed, or whether it's things for something like UNRWA to function itself, the United States is able to destroy that through its through its diplomatic efforts, diplomatic malpractice, basically. And then finally, of course, the media support. The media support is massive. This to me, you get into what's the most important. I mean, certainly the military support, that 25,000 tons of explosives. Practically, if that's not available, Israel can't do that. So, that makes, obviously that's of paramount, paramount or prime consideration. But the media support is geared towards those who already support Israel. And I think that's the most important thing to understand about the media support. It's not meant for us. It's not meant for audiences outside Western Europe, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, United States, Israel. It's meant to speak to those who are already on Israel's side. It's giving them a reason to continue on the side. It's emotionally manipulating them so that they are outraged, so that they see that there is a need for redemptive violence in Gaza, that is the only solution, is redemptive violence. That is the purpose of the media. And, there's a lot of great work being done right now. Chris McCreel at The Guardian just had an absolutely terrific article yesterday in The Guardian about how CNN is biased and complicit and basically working with the Israelis as well, too. If you look at the work done by Adam Johnson and Uthman Ali, one of those was in The Intercept. Another was in Adam Johnson's Substack, The Column, just quantitatively going through how the American media talks about Israelis, how it talks about Palestinians, the incredibly important things to read, to understand, because that type of manipulation has such an impact. It has such an impact on not just the overall narrative, but ensuring that righteous anger, that indignation, that need for redemptive violence is being understood by the population that already supports Israel. And I'll say there are also similar studies have been done about the BBC and CBC's, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporations, their coverage as well. So I'll wrap it up there. I know that's quite a lot to resuscitate at you all. Most of you all probably knew that. And like I said, I probably left out a lot. But I also see that we've got one of the other panelists joining. So I will turn it back over to Chris.
All right. Thank you so much, Matthew. That was you know what? I think there's so many aspects to this situation that no one person can ever understand the whole thing. And I think that, people who study this, who are in these movements, who pay attention to this, I think everyone can learn something from all of these conversations. So really appreciate everything that you have said here.